Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Say. It's wonderful to see everybody. We've been speaking for the past few weeks, talking about milchamas, which, I don't know, might be happening, might not be happening. We might be in the middle of one, we might not. Who knows? Who knows exactly what's happening? You know, what you say? But look, next week is a good day. Is a good day for Jews in Persia. I'll tell you that much. That's Baruch Hashem, Chadei Shemen Kedem, whatever will be. But there's a piece in Rav Kook that is very much related to what we've been talking about in Milchamas, specifically with regards to Purim, and we're going to go from the macrocosm to the microcosm of the individual. But as we've noted before in Rav Kook, and this is true in Torah Bichlal, but Rav Kook really carved and paved the road in this area, which is the relationship between the klal and the prat. That whenever you have something that exists bichlal, it's also bifrat, and that the entirety of the world is a big individual, and every person is a small reflection of the entirety of the world. We can put that down over here, make a little space. All right, good.
How come you're always on time?
Yeah, never. We try it, so we only have half an hour, so what can we do here? So that the klal and prat that exists within the world, Rav Kook speaks about extensively. And he deals with this with regards to Purim. The Megillah tells us something interesting. At the end of the story of Purim, you have V'rabim me'amei ha'aretz misyadim. Something that we don't find by anything else in all of Jewish history. You have a whole bunch of people in Persia that are misyadim, that are all converting to Judaism. Now, in the Rishonim and the Achronim, they debate whether or not this was actual conversion. Meaning, did they go to a Beis Din and be mekabel all mitzvahs, they Milah and Tevilah and Kabbalah all mitzvahs? Or, V'rabim me'amei ha'aretz misyadim means that they identified as Jews, right? They got their streimels and bekishes and got some long socks, right? And they started eating, started speaking Yiddish and going and ordering a knish from their local diner. What does it mean? What does it mean? V'rabim me'amei ha'aretz misyadim. But you see, fascinatingly, that it went instantly from anti-Semitism to everybody's going to murder the Jews to we all identify as Jewish. And that's an interesting thing. That's something that we did not have in any other period in time of all of Jewish history. Meaning, we've dealt with a lot of anti-Semites. But something happens on Purim that affects not just the Jewish people, but the people around us as well. You don't find that when we left Mitzrayim, that the Egyptians, that there's this moment that there's a chain for the Jewish people in the eyes of the Mitzrayim. They lent them stuff, and then 15 minutes later they were charging through the Midbar to murder us again. You don't find when Babylonian Empire falls that all of a sudden everybody becomes really pro-Jewish, and you don't find that the Greeks ever became very pro-Jewish. At no point in time do you find any of the European countries that wanted to murder us, which is, for the record, all of them. You never found any of them that actually, instead of killing the Jews, we love the Jews. Ma'anyen me'od. That v'rabim me'am ha'aretz misyadim is a secret to our understanding of Purim that by that point in time, the Megillah, you're already all right, we're counting pages until we're done here. How much longer until the kid that's got the loudest Haman grog in the right? Let's get out of here. But those words, "V'rabim me'amei ha'aretz misyadim," tells you that something fundamental has shifted. And this is part and parcel of what Chazal tell us, that Yemei HaPurim are going to be celebrated into Yemos HaMashiach. Because the truth is, that reality of all people in Shushan, all people in Persia, all people Mehodevad Kush, all of a sudden, switching from we hate the Jews to we love the Jews, that's something that harkens to Yemas HaMashiach in a way that nothing else in Jewish history does. It is Ke'en, what we spoke about last week, Namogu Kol Yoshvei Canaan Tipal Aleim Emasav Afachad. That all of a sudden, Klal Yisrael crosses Yam Suf and the whole world goes, ah! Ki nafal pachad hayudim alehem, because the terror of the Jews was upon them. All of a sudden, the Jews that are there are causing such a ruckus, they're causing such terror that people are now identifying as Jews, want to convert to Judaism. How does this happen and what does this mean? So the how it happens is what we discussed last week, which is there is a vision and a version of Jew that is the Ikar Tzelem Elokim. That is exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants in the world. And then when somebody sees that, they know that it's real. They know that it's legitimate. They know that it is accurate. And they know that it is unadulteratable. And now you cannot do anything about it. It is the truth. There are certain truths that become so completely self-obvious that it's impossible to fight against them. This is how the Nevi'im describe Bias Mashiach. The Mashiach is not going to rule the world through warfare and terror and fear, meaning that will also be part of it. Mashiach will be engaged in milchamos. The Rambam writes at Beferish at the end of Sefer Malachim Milchamasem. There are going to be milchamos, but Mashiach's koach is not going to come from his milchamos. It's going to come from his force of character. That he's going to show up and people are going to be like, well, we're not going to want to mess with that guy because kinafal pachad Yehudim alehim. And it's not simply going to be because we have superior technology and because the Mossad is amazing and all of that, Baruch Hashem. Ashenu shezachinu, that we live in such a generation. But that's only the beginning. The way that it goes eventually is, at some point in time, that shifts from we're going to go to war against the Jews to actually they're right. And that shift happens on Purim. There was a question. That shift happens on Purim, and we reenact that shift. We reenact that shift every year. Not yet, on a national scale and on a global scale, but on a personal scale. Says Rav Kook, that is part and parcel of the mitzvahs hayom of Purim. How? So if you take a look, this comes from the Siddur Ola Shariah. This is Rav Kook's Siddur. This is the newer version. They did a very nice job. From the back of Chelik Aleph here, where you have the Likutim that Rav Tzvi Yehuda wrote from his father's Torahs on Purim and Chanukah. We learned from this piece from Chanukah a couple of months ago. On the piece La'asos Purim, we'll see how much time we have to get through some of it. He writes, La'asos Purim, Yadanu medivrei chachamim amitim. We know from the chachamim amitim, that means the Mekubalim, right? Meaning from the Chachmei Kabbalah. She'aris Purim gedolah me'od, that the light of Purim, the illumination of Purim is immense, is enormous. Kedusha gedolah me'ira ba'olam, and there is a huge kedusha that comes into the world. V'nira she'mitoich kach milamala, and it seems that since this is true from above, that this immense or is coming into the world, ha'adam nishmar az mikol kilkul. It protects a person, protects each and every Jew from harm. There is a unique protection that arrives on Purim. Kevan shuhu asuk b'simchas Purim. For as long as a Jew is engaged in the simcha of Purim. Ve'ein tzarach kol kach liyos al mishmartai. And you don't have to be so careful to guard yourself on Purim. Rak shelo yaver chas v'shalom shum davar mi divrei Torah v'amitzvah. You just have to be careful not to be over on Averis. What's he talking about here? Is what the Gemara tells us, that on Purim you get drunk. The Rambam writes, in general, that it's also to get drunk. Why? Because a person that's drunk, it is impossible for them to be an Eved Hashem. That's what the Rambam writes. You cannot be an Eved Hashem if you're drunk. Why not? Because you don't have das. If you don't have das, you cannot do Ratzon Hashem. The principle behind this is that there are two parts to every human being. There is our physical bodies and all of the things that come along with our physical bodies, our desires and our tendencies and our habits. And then there is our seichel. And that seichel is godly and is striving upwards, and our bodies and our desires are striving in the opposite direction. And we have a tension between those things. And because we have a constant, persistent tension between body and soul, not really body and soul, that's a little bit of a misnomer, it is between our souls and our bodily instincts and bodily tendencies. The body itself is not really the thing that we fight against. It is our bodily instincts. Because we have that tension, anytime that a person is lacking in das, it is entirely plausible that they end up doing things that they're not proud of. For example, I was having this conversation with a yid that's struggling with his weight a little while ago. Those of you that might remember once upon a time, a few years ago, that yid was me. As one of my chavrusas said to me a couple of years ago, he says, Rel, you used to be a Gavra Rabba. Now I'm like, 100 pounds less than I was 7-8 years ago. So there was a yid that came and was speaking to me about this a couple of months back. He said to me, do you have any eitzes for me? I said, I'll give you one eitzah that you can try already now, before any diets or any shots or anything. I said to him, whatever you do, don't eat in front of a screen. Don't eat while watching something. So he said to me, how's that going to help me? I said, well, when do you consume most of your calories? So he starts cheshboning out. It's like, late at night when I'm like sitting in front of the computer or the iPad or the TV or whatever it is, you inhale like, a bag of chips. You don't realize. You don't realize. It's like another 3,000 calories. So you were careful to not eat the whole of Shabbos. You're very careful. And then it came Motzei Shabbos and you're sitting down and you're like, watching something. And while you're watching something, you can eat for 2.5 hours without noticing. Because there's no das there. So without das, habits take over. Is there anybody here that is not familiar with this? Shkoyach. Without das, there's a lack of Tzelem Elokim. By the way, I might have mentioned to you guys before, it's a Havamin in the Gemara in Mesachas Baba Kama. The Gemara asks in Baba Kama, the Mishnah tells us, Adam Muad La'olam, that a person is always forewarned, meaning you're always responsible for your actions. And the Gemara has a question, what if a person does damage while sleeping? Are they responsible for that or not? And that's what the Gemara says, Adam Muad La'olam, no, you are. The Chazon Ish writes on that there's a Havamina in the Gemara that a person that's sleeping is not called a person. Because if you don't have das, you're not an Adam. Without das, you're not a human being. What are you? I don't know. The Havamina is that you're not an Adam. The maskana of the Gemara is not that you are an Adam, but that you're still responsible. You're still responsible. But there's a chisaron in the Tzelem Elokim of being a human being if you don't have das. If you don't have das, you're not a person. So how could it be that a human being could be an Eved Hashem if they don't have das? So to get drunk, bichlal, is aser. And then all of a sudden, comes along Chazal, we pass on this halacha, means until you are lacking das, you give up your das. Give it up completely. And then all of a sudden, somehow or another, it works. So the Nakud is this. I'll say it outside and then we'll see it inside in a moment. The truth is, that our bodies are also Tselem Elokim. And the deepest ratzon of a human being, and certainly of a Jew, is to be an Eved Hashem. And the only reason that we're not is because we have been habituated and trained and coerced and persuaded and seduced into not doing Ratzon Hashem. And that's why we have tension. And that tension is a result of chait. And a result of external pressure and internal pressure. This is what the Gemara says in Mesechus Brachos. Rav Alexander would say in his Tfilos, Ritzoneinu la'aseh ritzonecha, we want to do, Rebbeinu Shalom, what you want us to do. Umi ma'akev, who's preventing us from doing this? Sa'or shebe'isa v'shibud malchias. Sa'or shebe'isa means the chametz that's in the dough. That's the Yetzer Hara that gives us a sense of gaiva. V'shibud malchias, and the pressures that exist externally. Meaning internally and externally we have these pressures, and that makes us do the things that we don't want to do. But the truth is that both Guf and Neshama want to do what Hashem wants. We do want to do what Hashem wants. This is what the Rambam Paschals Halacha L'Maaseh, that Makin Oisa Ad She'omer Ratzoni, if you have a guy that doesn't want to give his wife a get, so I'm not saying this La'alacha, but right? Kovin Oisa, meaning the Rambam says Makin Oisa, you beat him up until he says I want to. But that's a forced get. That's not. Elamai Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin explains this extensively, that what it means is you have a will, and then you have a will that has superseded it. And enough of a clap makes you drop the thing that you didn't really want and get to the core of what you really, really want. I mean, you have this all the time, right? We'll talk about the diet thing for a second. Or any bad habit. Mark Twain said, quitting smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I've done it hundreds of times. Right? Speak to somebody that is trying to give up smoking. So you speak to a youth that's trying to give up smoking, and you say to him, do you want to give up smoking? Yes. And then you see him smoking a cigarette. But why are you smoking a cigarette? Because I wanted to. So you want to and you want to. There's two different ritzonos. The question is, what's the real ratzon? What's the real desire that a human being has? Do you want it, or do you want both? Which one do you want more? Which one is the ratzon that is ikar, and which is the ratzon that is tafel? What's the main desire that a person has, and what is the extraneous desire that a person has? And so Rav Kook tells us the following. We'll skip a little bit here. If you take a look, the first word on the line is oid, like the 8 lines from the bottom there. So he says, Im kain, it says, for a Jew that is not yet perfected, that hasn't worked on themselves, what happens is Torah becomes challenging. This is why the Jewish people at Har Sinai weren't ready to willingly accept the Torah in its fullest extent. But when it happened that the Jewish people were threatened, and Haman wanted to murder us physically. And when Hashem saved us from that, our bodies were redeemed from those evil, extraneous wills and powers. Meaning something fascinating happened on Purim. And I mentioned this to the Chaver that in the Shiurim Monday night, those that were not, you can take a look online. All the Shiurim, railblumenthal.org, you'll see all of the Shiurim there. Just click on podcasts and Shiurim, you'll see all there. From Monday night, we spoke about the fact that the Jews that lived in Shushan, it's important to know, who were the Jews of Shushan at the time of Mordechai and Esther? I'll tell you something that they didn't tell you in in the yeshivish places. The Jews that were in Shushan, at the times of Mordechai and Esther, were not exactly the frummest Jews in the world. They were the ones that didn't go back. Right? They didn't go back. They didn't go back when Zerubbabel and when Ezra said, let's go back to Yerushalayim. Those were the ones that said, it's nice in Persia. It's Leibedik here. Parnasa. I don't know. Right? The ones that didn't want to go back to Eretz Yisrael. We pointed out Monday night that even the names of Mordechai and Esther are not very Jewish names. They're not from names. Esther has a Jewish name. She's also called Hadassah.
They went to the feast also.
100%. Meaning they're part of the whole thing. They voted for Mamdani. I weiß ich nicht. Those chevra. They had, I don't know, when they introduced themselves, they had like pronouns. Whatever.
Not that bad. Can't be that bad.
By the way, much worse. Much worse. These Yidden that were mufka from Torah and mitzvahs and not, they didn't care about anything. Those are the chevra. And that's the side, by the way, of the fact that the Megillah doesn't have the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in it at all. It's not a religious book.
It says Kalim came showing him, so he ate from the things that they're not supposed to eat.
Yeah, I'm saying, but the book itself, take a listen to the shir we said Monday night. The book is not a religious book. It is addressed to secular Jews. Completely secular Jews. That it's written for secular Jews. The whole Sefer, the whole Megillah Esther is written for secular Jews that did not recognize that there was any value in the Yiddishkeit. And it was lebedik to sit at the Suda of Achashverosh and to be part of this whole Malchus that is rising up in the world. Achashverosh had the greatest Malchus. It was the nicest Malchus in the whole world. It preached religious tolerance and everybody should do whatever they want. Chazal say, everybody, you want glat kosher, you can have glat kosher. You want halal, you have halal. Whatever you want at the Suda, you can have. Everybody is free to do, practice as they choose. And that's the whole of Achashverosh's Malchus. Nobody's going to force you how to practice. Nobody's going to force you how to speak. Nobody's going to force you what religion you can do whatever you want. Just be loyal to the Malchus. And the Malchus is everybody can do whatever they want.
How does Mordechai say that everything that is shown is different? If everybody can do whatever they want, how can it be different? I mean, Haman says his reasoning to Achashverosh about why they should be killed is because they're different and they don't follow the whatever it is.
Because they are religiously intolerant. They don't believe that everybody should be allowed to do whatever they want. They're conservatives. The Jews. They don't believe in that everybody should do whatever they want. So we should kill all of them. Well, give me 1 second. The Nakuda that Mordechai and Esther are dealing with here is you have a whole bunch of Jews that are not engaged in Torah mitzvahs at all. And then something happens to them. And the thing that happens to them is their entire physical life is threatened. And the only thing that they have is their spiritual life. And there's something fascinating that happens to a Jew that realizes that the whole of this world is sheker. Is they realize that it's not valuable, it's not worth it, it's not... To the extent, and every person in this room has thought about this, at least once, certainly since October 7th and probably before, Lo Yitzur, it would be that in the United States of America, it would happen like happened in Germany. Would you drop everything that you own and flee? Yes. Yes. Life is good here, life is nice, life is wonderful. You have your house, you have your car, you have whatever it is. But Khalila, it happened that they tried to say, if you don't, whatever, then you will kill you if you don't stop being Jewish. Every Jew, Baruch Hashem in this room at least, would say, well then I'm out of here. I don't care. I'd drop everything. Which means that we all know at the root of everything is that our Yadus is much more valuable than anything else that exists. That the continuity of my family and of your family being part of Klal Yisrael is worth way more than anything that we have owned, do own, will ever own. All of that is nothing. Ka'ayin ve'efes mamish. It's not valuable. There's nothing valuable about it at all if it's going to threaten my Yadus. And that is what Klal Yisrael discovers. V'rabim me'amei ha'aretz misyatim doesn't just mean the people in Shushan, it means the Jews. that were Amei Ha'aretz. They were Amaratim. They knew nothing. V'rabim me'amei ha'aretz misyadim means that the Yidden themselves became Jewish again. They re-Jewed, right?
Many soldiers.
That's it.
Like many soldiers.
Yes. Like this phenomenon, not just the Chaylim, but crazy that the chevra that like the hostages in Gaza came out, maminim b'nei maminim. People that never put on tefillin before in their life, putting on tefillin. People that never davened before in their life, are davening. Meaning all of a sudden there's this rejuvenation, because when you take away all of what I have in my body, I realize that what I am is a neshama, and then something fascinating happens. The guf itself is mitahar. Then you realize that the guf is not just a klippa, it's not a nothing, it's not just, as opposed to many other religions and nations of the world that view the physical body as something to be disdainful of, and it's just a distraction, and enjoyment and love and pleasure is all, it's all in a Yetzer Hara. Klal Yisrael believes the opposite, that Kedusha could be in your body. The Rambam has a sefer called Sefer HaKedusha. What's the book of Kedusha for the Rambam all about? Sexuality and eating. That's where Kedusha is found by Klal Yisrael. Kedusha is found in engaging with our physical bodies, not by running away from it. And so something fascinating happens in Purim, says Rav Kook. The ikar of Purim is to understand that even if you don't have das, even if that is taken away from you, the guf of a Jew is Kaddish. The guf is Kaddish. That's Chayiv Inish B'Sum B'Puri Ad Lo Yada. And Tzvi Yehuda writes here, this is on the next page, on Taf Ayin Zayin, the second paragraph, he says, V'lulu de misafina hayanirali, he's saying from his father, if not for the fact that I was afraid to say this, I would say it, Da'afte b'chol hayom mishasei al yispalel, even though we paskin that a person that's drunk is not allowed to daven, I would tell you that it's okay for a Jew that's drunk on Purim to daven. It's okay to daven drunk. Now we don't paskin that way. He says, I think we should. Crazy. Why? So he says, Ki ikar tam shasa al yispalel yiralim b'nei shatfila hi ha'alol malika garban Hashem. The reason that you cannot be drunk while davening is because your tefillah is like a korban in front of Hashem. V'im nimtze b'inyan davak ra, and if there's something negative attached to it, harehu makriv al gav mizbeach elyon davar she'ein roy l'kedusha. Then it's as if you are putting something on the mizbeach that's not roy to be there, that's not fitting to be there. Aval b'yoyim zeh koichas haguf gam kein mikudashim l'shamayim. But on this day, what we realize is that our bodies are also kadosh. That even a Jew that isn't thinking is a Kadosh Elyon. And the light of Hashem is shining upon each and every Jew, no matter what. What it means is that the assimilated Jews of Shushan discovered how Jewish they really were, and how much they loved HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and how devoted they were to Torah and mitzvahs, that they'd never practiced, that they'd never engaged in, that they'd never cared about, that they'd never thought about, that the Eretz Yisrael was a distant dream and Yerushalayim was whatever. All of a sudden, these Jews, these are the ones that are celebrating Torah and mitzvahs. La Yehudim ha'yisa oira, oira zu Torah, oira v'simcha, v'sasa and v'ikar, all of a sudden bris milah and tefillin, what's going on? No. You know what happened on Purim? You had a whole group of Jews in Shushan lining up to have a bar mitzvah. Lining up to get a bris milah. Lining up to put on tefillin for the first time. All of a sudden, there's this renewal and this rejuvenation of Jews that were not kosher to Torah mitzvahs at all, becoming connected. This is what happens in Purim.
So those were the only people who were Messiachadim, were the Jews?
No.
A combination.
It's everybody. But it includes Jews. And not only does it include Jews, it includes each and every Jew in the part of us, and this is Rav Kook's point, Klal and Prat. It includes the part of you that you think is not connected to Hashem.
You
That
can
the-
interpret Mame Oretz as Amaratz.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a chelik of every Jew that's in Amaretz. Salim Yisman, the part of you that you think is least connected to Hashem, on Purim you discover is connected to Hashem.
All this happened because they were afraid that they were going to be eliminated.
Yes.
So in the Holocaust, so you had many Jews who said, "Where is HaKadosh Baruch Hu?" And they
Yes.
lost all the Yiddishkeit, while others, were survived.
I have no tainas against anybody that did or didn't lose faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are things that are beyond our comprehension and understanding. But what I will tell you is the story of Purim. The reason this continues for all generations is because of this Nakuda. The reason that it's relevant to me and you is because once upon a time, a group of Jews realized that there's nothing that divides between them and Hashem. Because when everything was on the line, we realized all we have is Hashem. And then Hashem said, that's all that you need. And then I'll give you everything. That was the mikveh that was matahar the entirety of Klal Yisrael. Was when you realize the whole world is meaningless except for what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, and then the world is meaningful. That's what gives it to us. We should be afraid in Purim. By next Purim, we should be zeicher that La Yehudim Hayisa and La Yehudim Yiyah V'simcha V'sasam Yikar. That all of our enemies should also kinafal pacha the Yehudim aleim. Oh,